The small, hidden city of Schattenberg was tucked away, unknown to the world, existing as a scar on the edge of civilization. Its alleys were slick with rain, its buildings towering relics from centuries past, seemingly untouched by time or decay. But Schattenberg had secrets, hidden even from those who called it home. And these secrets were guarded by the pale aristocrats that lived within its highest towers. It was said they came from ancient families, those with strange names and bloodlines older than the stones in their mansions. The truth was darker. Each family in Schattenberg hid a curse, a shadow that loomed over them, inherited like a twisted legacy. They were bound to the city, as if by chains, unable to leave its shadowy limits, for they were not entirely human. These aristocrats were vampires, ancient and powerful, but unlike the legends told in far-off lands, they were cursed with a hunger not merely for blood but for something far more elusive. The essence of dreams, the whispers of fear. They craved the last shreds of hope in their victims, and once drawn in, their victims were left hollow, wandering the city like ghosts, drained of light, of warmth, of life. One family, the Ravenaires, was particularly feared. Legends claimed they could steal a person's soul by merely looking into their eyes. But there was one Ravenaire who stood out among them, Countess Alara, whose beauty was such that even the other vampires kept their distance, for her gaze could paralyze even the strongest among them. Alara had a talent for weaving nightmares, haunting the minds of those who crossed her path, leaving them ensnared in endless dark dreams that her own hunger would feed upon. But she was tormented by one thing, a prophecy whispered in the old language, chanted by the city's most ancient vampire long ago. It spoke of a child, born of shadows yet untouched by them, who would bring ruin to the vampire's dark dominion. Alara was determined to find this child, convinced that it could be hidden somewhere in Schattenberg, within the families that cowered under her watchful eye. One stormy night, she called upon every vampire in Schattenberg, summoning them to the old cathedral in the city's heart. Shadows danced across the cathedral's worn stone walls, where the vampires gathered in tense silence. Alara stood before them, her eyes blazing with determination. "We will find the child," she declared, her voice echoing through the hollow darkness. "And we will drain every light from them before they can draw breath to betray us." The vampires murmured in uneasy agreement, for they'd felt the stirrings of something new, an energy they couldn't explain, hidden within the city's winding streets. But in the crowd, one young vampire, Elias, glanced at Alara with something that resembled doubt. Unlike the others, he had always felt an uneasy pull toward the light, a strange yearning that set him apart, a longing he couldn't explain. And as Alara's words echoed, a thought crossed his mind, what if this prophecy was meant to bring not ruin, but salvation? Alara's gaze fell upon him, and for a moment, her smile faltered. Did she sense his doubt? Was she, too, haunted by the faint traces of hope that dared to linger? As the meeting ended, Elias slipped away into the rain-soaked night, his mind reeling with fear and something he hadn't felt in centuries, a spark of courage. Somewhere in Schattenberg, the child awaited, and perhaps, if he could find them first, the future wouldn't belong solely to shadows, but in the alleys, in the towers, the other vampires moved too, their hunger sharpened, ready to drain every bit of light that dared flicker within Schattenberg's cursed heart. Elias moved swiftly through the twisting streets of Schattenberg, the rain veiling his steps as he made his way to the eastern quarter, where the poorest families of the city lived. His mind spun with questions. If the prophecy was true, how could one child stand against the full might of Schattenberg's vampires? And why did he feel a strange, undeniable need to find this child? He paused in the shadow of a crumbling archway, his sharp eyes scanning the narrow alley. Suddenly, a faint light caught his attention from a nearby doorway. A woman, cloaked and silent, was ushering a small child inside. The child's face was pale, his eyes wide and bright as he cast one nervous glance over his shoulder, straight at Elias. It was only a second, but in that moment, Elias felt a shiver run through him, as if the child saw him clearly, knew him somehow, even in the darkness. The door shut, and Elias was left alone in the alley, cold dread clawing at him. He had seen something strange in that boy's eyes, something he hadn't felt in hundreds of years. Defiance mixed with innocence, a light that felt both old and new. Could this be the child? But Elias was not the only one who had seen the boy. Across the street, hidden within the shadows, a figure emerged, cloaked and silent, her eyes glowing with a cold, terrible light. Countess Alara. She stepped into the alley, her gaze fixed on Elias, her smile thin and dangerous. "You seem eager tonight, Elias," she purred, her voice a chilling whisper that slid down his spine. Elias forced himself to meet her gaze, hiding his unease. "I'm merely curious, Countess," he replied carefully. "The prophecy is intriguing, the thought of a child capable of bringing down our kind. I wonder if it's more than just an old tale." Alara's smile sharpened. "Oh, it is far from just a tale," she replied, her voice low. "I have waited centuries for this child's appearance, for the chance to finally end the prophecy. And no doubt you've sensed it, haven't you? A pulse, an energy. They are here, Elias, and we must root them out before they grow stronger." Elias nodded, hiding the question swirling in his mind. If Alara sensed his hesitation, he knew he'd be torn to pieces before he could even begin to search for the child himself. As Alara swept past him, Elias felt a dark resolve grip him. He would find the boy, and he would decide for himself if this child was a threat or a way to free Schattenberg from the darkness that bound them all. Under the cover of night, Elias moved with renewed purpose, his mind racing. There were whispers among the families of strange dreams and unusual occurrences in the eastern quarter. The prophecy was spreading, infecting their minds like a fever. And as he moved closer to the dilapidated tenement where he'd seen the boy disappear, he felt it too, a strange warmth, a flickering light amidst the endless shadows. But as he approached, footsteps echoed behind him, faint but unmistakable. He glanced back to see three cloaked figures, their eyes gleaming with suspicion and hunger, agents of Alara, undoubtedly. They had been following him, watching him since the meeting at the cathedral. There would be no more searching for the child in the open. He would have to outwit Alara and her watchful minions, or risk dooming the child and himself. With a quick glance at the shadows, Elias ducked into a side alley, his mind racing. The hunters would grow more relentless, and the city would soon be overrun with Alara's agents. Yet he couldn't stop now. He had felt something in that child's gaze, a promise, or perhaps a plea. As the agent's footsteps grew louder, Elias slipped further into the darkness, a plan forming in his mind. He would protect the boy from Alara's wrath, but he would need allies, and to find them, he would have to travel far deeper into Schattenberg's shadowy underbelly than ever before. Far above, in the highest tower, Alara watched the storm unfold, her eyes cold and distant. A faint smile played on her lips as she whispered to herself, "You can't hide from me, Elias. The shadows always find what they seek." And deep within the city's heart, the child lay restless, haunted by dreams of a face he hadn't seen, the stranger who, though hidden in shadow, reached for him with a flicker of light that was both fearsome and familiar. The darkness in Schattenberg thickened, the ancient city closing in like a beast with bated breath, waiting for the night when light and shadow would finally meet. The storm rolled on through the night, its relentless rain masking Elias's footsteps as he ventured deeper into the heart of Schattenberg. He knew he had little time before Alara and her agents would find him, so he moved quickly, keeping to narrow alleys and hidden paths that only a vampire could navigate. Every step brought him closer to the child and to the hope, however fragile, that he could protect him. At last, Elias arrived at the old tenement, where a single candle flickered in an upper window. The same doorway through which the child had vanished earlier now stood open, casting a soft, inviting glow on the wet cobblestones. Elias hesitated. The air here felt thick with an energy he couldn't explain, but he knew there was no turning back. Inside, the building was silent, save for the soft patter of rain against broken window panes. As he climbed the creaking staircase, he felt a pull, like an invisible hand guiding him to a small room at the end of the hall. And there, sitting cross-legged on a threadbare rug, was the boy. The child looked up, his gaze calm and steady, and Elias felt a surge of recognition. This boy's eyes held an ancient wisdom, a spark of something pure and untouched by Schattenberg's darkness. For a moment, Elias wondered if this was what Alara had feared, a force so gentle yet so powerful that it could undo centuries of darkness. "You came," the boy said softly, his voice barely more than a whisper. Elias nodded, kneeling before him. "I came to protect you," he replied. "The city's rulers, they fear you. They believe you're destined to end them." The boy smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "They don't understand. I am not here to destroy them, only to bring peace to those who are willing to accept it." Elias's heart pounded. "You mean to say, you can end this curse? Free us." The child nodded, reaching out to place a small hand on Elias's. "If you help me, I can show them a different path, a way to exist without darkness, without hunger." But footsteps echoed in the hallway, closer this time. Alara had found them. Her agents were outside the door, their shadows stretching beneath the frame, the air thickening with their intent. The boy squeezed Elias's hand. "You have to trust me," he whispered, his voice filled with a quiet strength. "Stand with me, and I promise I will protect you." Elias felt something stir within him, something he hadn't felt in centuries. Hope. With a nod, he rose, positioning himself between the boy and the door just as it burst open, revealing Alara, her eyes blazing with fury. "Step aside, Elias," she commanded, her voice as cold as death itself. "This is the child we've been hunting. He is a threat to us all." But Elias didn't move. "No, Alara, this boy is our salvation." Her eyes narrowed, and she took a step forward, raising a hand as if to strike. But before she could move, the child's soft, steady voice filled the room. "I bring you peace, Alara," he said, his voice resonant with an otherworldly power. "Let go of your fear. Release the shadows that bind you." Alara froze, her face contorting in fury and disbelief. But as she looked into the boy's calm, unwavering gaze, her anger began to wane. The shadows in her eyes flickered, then softened, as if the darkness within her were melting away. She lowered her hand, a stunned expression crossing her face. One by one, the other vampires gathered outside the door felt the same release, as if some ancient, unseen weight was lifting from their souls. The dark hunger that had haunted them for centuries dissolved, replaced by a warmth they had almost forgotten. Alara fell to her knees, her eyes wide with wonder. What have you done to me?" she whispered. The boy stepped forward, offering her his hand. "I've shown you a path beyond darkness," he said gently. "You are free now." As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the vampires of Schadenberg emerged into the streets, their faces filled with awe and disbelief. The curse had lifted, and they felt, for the first time in centuries, truly alive. They embraced the light as it poured through the city, washing over every corner, dispelling the shadows that had ruled for so long. Elias looked down at the child, gratitude welling in his heart. "You've given us a gift we can never repay," he murmured. The boy simply smiled, his gaze warm. "Live in peace," he replied softly, and with that, he vanished into the light, leaving Elias and the others to a dawn they never thought they'd see. And so Schadenberg was reborn, no longer bound by shadows, but thriving in the light of a new beginning. The city's secrets faded into memory, replaced by a tale of hope and redemption, a tale that would be whispered for centuries, of the child who brought light to the darkest of places.